A night of TV on the couch is supposed to be a cozy experience, not an emotionally scarring one, but no one told these shows that.
From the opening moments of this episode, things go downhill fast. Timmy, the main character, keeps trying to do good deeds, but nobody appreciates his efforts, even his loved ones. Understandably upset, he wishes that he'd never been born, a wish that his fairy godparent Wanda reluctantly grants. In a parody of It's a Wonderful Life, you know, the beloved Christmas movie about offing yourself.
Yeah, so you still think killing yourself would make everyone feel happier, eh?
Oh, I don't know. I guess you're right.
Timmy sees what the world would be like without him. However, unlike the movie, Timmy discovers that everyone he knows is much happier if he's not around. Even more troubling, Timmy is later shown the hellish place where all the kids who wish they were never born go, implying that this sort of thing happens on a regular basis. Later, Jorgen von Strangle explains that the whole thing was a setup aimed at teaching a lesson. The lesson that you can't even trust your fairy godparents, especially if you're going through a tough time in your life. ABC's coming-of-age sitcom Boy Meets World didn't shy away from difficult subjects, but one episode tops them all: Season 4's cult fiction. Thanks to his turbulent home life, Sean frequently struggles with loneliness and abandonment issues, and that makes him a perfect mark for a local cult that targets troubled kids. Before long, he's hopelessly brainwashed by the cult's leader, Mr. Mack. Later, Sean's teacher, Mr. Turner, who served as a sort of surrogate father to him, is involved in a bad motorcycle wreck and is hospitalized. Unable to cope with the situation, Sean brings Mr. Mack to the hospital with him, where Corey's father and Principal Feeney have a confrontation with the cult leader.
Now, you brought Sean down, thanks. Now, why don't you just take a hike back to Conland?
Now, do you see how judgmental these people are?
No, listen.
Meanwhile, Corey and Topanga bring Sean to Mr. Turner's room and force him to confront the reality of their teacher's condition head-on, leading to an emotional monologue where Sean talks directly to God.
Don't blow me off, John! Don't blow me off, God! I've never asked you for anything, and I never wanted to come to you like this.
If you grew up watching Rugrats, you might not have been aware of the heavy themes. But as an adult, you'll soon notice some of the really tragic backstories that go unnoticed by the babies. The darkest episode, though, is Angelica's worst nightmare. Angelica Pickles enjoys her status as a spoiled only child, so when her mother announces that she's pregnant, Angelica's fragile ego is thrown into a tailspin. Her parents ignore her while discussing the pregnancy, and Angelica begins to worry that they won't have time for her. In a nightmare, Angelica's baby brother has arrived, and her parents have forgotten who she is, forcing her to live in the laundry room and eat table scraps. After taking everything she loves, the gigantic baby chases Angelica out of the house before catching her and starting to eat the car, which causes her to wake up screaming. Later, Angelica's parents tell her that they aren't going to have the baby after all, and while she feigns disappointment, Angelica is secretly pleased about the sad news. In the Powerpuff Girls episode Twisted Sister, the trio of cute cartoon superheroes find themselves overwhelmed with school, chores, and constantly saving the day. They decide to create a fourth Powerpuff Girl to help share the load, but instead of following the professor's original formula of sugar, spice, and everything nice, the girls use artificial sweetener, dirt, and things like crayons, lizards, and boxing gloves, along with a secret ingredient, Chemical X. The result is a gigantic, misshapen, and not very bright new Powerpuff Girl that they name Bunny. Unfortunately, Bunny mixes things up, throwing police officers in jail while letting the criminals run free. When her sisters arrive, they angrily tell Bunny that she's bad and can't be a Powerpuff Girl. Heartbroken, Bunny flies away to sob her heart out on a lonely cliffside, but returns when her sisters are in danger to defeat all the bad guys, excited that she's finally been good. Unfortunately, this effort was too much for Bunny's unstable body, and she explodes. A piece of her dress flutters to the ground, and the girls cry as they realize how awful they were. Even the narrator of the show can barely handle it.
Oh, it's so sad, I can't take it.
In stark contrast to the typical slapstick antics found in the classic cartoon Tom and Jerry, the 1956 feature Blue Cat Blues has an extremely tragic and traumatizing plot. Tom falls in love with a beautiful white cat, but although she returns his affections at first, she eventually leaves Tom for a rich neighborhood cat named Butch. Jerry tells Tom to move on with his life, but Tom can't let go, and eventually literally sells himself into slavery to buy her a car.
Cost him an arm and a leg, but he willingly sold himself into slavery for love.
Which promptly gets destroyed by Butch's fancy coupe. Heartbroken and hopelessly in debt, Tom turns to the bottle, the milk bottle that is, and decides to sit down on the train tracks and end it all once the two cats get married. Jerry, at a loss on how to cheer up his friend, consoles himself that at least his own girlfriend wouldn't do that to him. Just then, Jerry sees his own girlfriend drive by with a different mouse, with a just married sign on the back of their car, too. Realizing that life now holds nothing for him either, Jerry joins Tom on the track, and the screen fades to black as the sound of a train whistle approaches. The end. Most episodes of the popular children's series Thomas the Tank Engine are rather cheerful affairs, usually with Thomas or one of the other engines learning a valuable lesson after being stubborn or childish in some way. In the sad story of Henry, a similar setup leads to a decidedly dark turn. The green engine Henry is afraid the rain will ruin his bright and shiny paint, so he takes refuge inside a tunnel and then refuses to leave it, even after the rain stops. When logical reasoning, firm orders, and even brute force fail to budge the silly steam engine, railway manager and father figure Sir Topham Hatt finally gives up. Workers pull up the rails to the tunnel and lay bricks over the entrance, trapping Henry inside. The other engines cheekily whistle at Henry as they pass, and he becomes extremely lonely and miserable, and the soot from their smoke ruins his shiny paint. As the sad green engine contemplates his unknown fate, even the narrator, Ringo Starr, gets in on Henry's public humiliation.
But I think he deserved his punishment. Don't you?
That's right, kids. If you misbehave, then it's completely normal for your parents to lock you in your room and not let you out. And if you've been really naughty, they might never come back. And then a former Beatle will say you deserved everything you got.
A handful of kid vid writers have taken it upon themselves to close out their series with some spectacularly definitive and dark final episodes. The finale of Superman the Animated Series finds Superman going full evil, but it's not his fault as Darkseid has brainwashed him into unleashing death and destruction. After Superman attacks some military bases, Supergirl tries to stop him and nearly gets killed in the process, which is when Lois Lane shows up and breaks the trance. Later on, Superman awakens in a military prison awaiting execution, but he manages to escape and make his way back to Darkseid's palace for a final, extremely violent confrontation. Superman nearly kills the bad guy, but instead, he implores Darkseid's oppressed followers to do with him what they wish. Forever devoted, they whisk his body away for medical treatment. As for Superman, he has to deal with a planet full of people who feel betrayed by their one-time protector, unaware of the brainwashing.
Onward, for the glory of Darkseid and Apocalypse.
One of the original Nick Jr. cartoons, The World of David the Gnome, was a gentle show about magical creatures and forest animals. This richly animated series followed around tiny, impressively bearded David and his gnome family and friends as he went about his quiet gnome life. According to lore, gnomes lived to the age of 400, and for the run of the show, David and his wife Lisa were right around 399. And so, on the series finale, death came for David, Lisa, and another gnome named Casper. Or rather, they came for death. Doing what 400-year-old gnomes do, they ritualistically accepted their fate, walking to the aptly named Mountain of Beyond, where they transformed into trees. A pocket-sized toy line of action figures and playsets called Mighty Max reached stores in 1992. A year later, the Mighty Max TV series hit the air, adding a surprisingly rich backstory and mythology to those cheap pieces of plastic. It begins with Max receiving a statue that contains an ancient teleportation-enabling baseball cap that also leads him to do battle with a hideous monster called the Skullmaster. Mighty Max was one of the most violent kid shows of the era, as the Skullmaster routinely and graphically killed people. In the final episode, he even kills Max's friends, a prophetic fowl named Virgil and a Viking named Norman. So Max uses his baseball cap to travel back in time to the events of the first episode. He then goes forth to relive the entire series, only with an eye this time toward an outcome where his best friends don't die.
Wonder who could have said it?
Wait a second. This is deja vu all over again.
Imagine, if you will, a time in which children were not computer savvy and we needed semi-educational TV shows to familiarize them with the basic technology. That time was the 1990s, a period in which ABC's Saturday morning lineup included a show called Reboot. Set inside a computer city called Mainframe, the action involved a guardian named Bob who protected the city against viruses named Hexadecimal and Megabyte. Reboot could be a little corny at times, but it also demystified computing terms for millions of tech-minded kids. Many of those same kids were likely traumatized by the surprisingly dark ending. Megabyte, in the form of a Trojan horse virus, gains access to the good guy's lair and sets out to infect every program in existence. In other words, he destroys the world of the show and the heroes don't know how to stop it.
Prepare yourselves for the hunt.
Part of the Digimon universe of cartoons and games, Digimon Tamers was a one-season wonder about cute animals that are also magical fighting monsters trained by children. On the final episode, the various Digimon and their human companions wage war against the evil D-Reaper. They prevail, sending the bad guy back into the digital world from whence he came. But it only works because the Digimon themselves have to get sucked into oblivion as well. One by one, the cute little guys disappear as their heartbroken trainers look on. Sure, the cliffhanger seems to suggest there's some sort of portal to that other realm, but for all intents and purposes, those Digimon are gone, gone, gone.
More often than not, beloved sitcoms finish out with a finale that fits into one of a few established archetypes. For example, the will they or won't they couple finally gets together, one or more of the main characters move away, somebody gets married, somebody has a baby, etc. In other words, major life events wrap up the show with an eye to the future and tears in the viewer's eyes. But not all big sitcom finales end in such an emotional chapter-closing fashion. TV history boasts some exceptions to the rule, shows that bravely and boldly went against the norm by going dark. Here are some of the most surprisingly twisted final TV comedy episodes of all time. Seinfeld was never a sticky, sweet, feel-good sitcom, and in the highly anticipated series finale, all the selfish and thoughtless deeds committed by Jerry, George, Elaine, and Kramer over the years finally caught up with them. The gang nearly endures a plane crash, only for the jet to land safely in a small Massachusetts town. While there, they witness a crime firsthand and make jokes about the victim while it's happening.
See, the great thing about robbing a fat guy is it's an easy getaway, you know? They can't really chase you.
The victim mentions this while filing his report with the police, who arrest the Seinfeld four for violating a Good Samaritan law. A slew of guest stars file through as character witnesses at the ensuing trial, confirming that the gang that audiences loved tuning in to see every week all those years were bad people. The show ends up with the Central Four locked up in prison, having learned nothing at all. To be fair, this CBS sitcom was titled How I Met Your Mother and not How I Spent Many Years with Your Mother. While it seemed like every woman Ted Mosby dated over the years could have turned out to be his kid's mother, the only real contender seemed to be close friend and off-and-on girlfriend Robin. The 9th and final season of the show switched things up considerably. The entire run of episodes, except for the finale, takes place over the weekend leading up to Robin's wedding to Barney. Viewers finally find out that Ted lived happily ever after with the mother, Tracy, until she died of an illness in 2024. The series finishes up with middle-aged Ted rekindling his romance with Robin, who divorced Barney after 3 years of marriage. Death and divorce. What fun! Dinosaurs ran on ABC from 1991 to 1994. It combined puppets and animatronics to create a satirical series centered around the Sinclairs, a middle-class family of dinosaurs living in a prehistoric Pangea that bore a striking cultural resemblance to 90s America. This cute and amusing family comedy ambitiously concluded with a mass extinction event that not only signaled the end for the Sinclairs, but for all dinosaurs. In an attempt to keep an invasive plant species under control, a task force of dinosaurs spray the planet with toxic chemicals, which wipes out all plant life. The task force's idea to make plants grow again by dropping bombs into volcanoes to create rain clouds works too well, triggering snow and a subsequent ice age. The episode ends with the Sinclairs holed up in their house trying to stay warm and stave off their imminent deaths.
And taking a look at the long-range forecast, continued snow, darkness, and extreme cold.
NBC's Alf was a weird show about a sassy alien. He crash-landed in a suburban garage, loved to eat cats, lazed around the house all day watching TV and eating junk food, and told tales about his bizarre life on his home planet of Melmac. There were really only two ways that Alf could end. In one scenario, Alf's identity is exposed and he becomes an international celebrity. Or his identity is exposed and the government comes to collect him and take him away to a secret, scary research facility. As this was a family sitcom, one would think option 1 would be the way to go. But nope, it ended with Alf whisked away to an undisclosed location where he presumably endured all manner of pain and torture.
Just my luck. I'm a sports fan among you.
Patient fans had to wait until 1996's Project Alf TV movie to learn that he survived. The Korean War-set comedy drama MASH finished its 11-year run in 1983 with an extra-long episode titled Good Night, Farewell, and Amen. More than 106 million people tuned in, making it the most-watched scripted program in American TV history. There were a lot of laughs, a lot of tears, and more of the gut punches about the many horrors of war that the show famously wove into the comedy over the years. While peace negotiations are underway, Hawkeye Pierce sits in a therapy session, remembering being on a bus with a Korean refugee woman carrying an annoying chicken that wouldn't stop squawking. Hawkeye angrily ordered the fearful woman to shut up the bird, which she did by snapping its neck. With the help of his therapist, he uncovers a repressed memory. It wasn't a bird, it was the woman's baby, and she smothered it out of fear.
It was a baby! She smothered her own baby!
That's about the darkest place a sitcom could or would ever go. The Mary Tyler Moore Show was revolutionary. It was one of the first shows about an unmarried woman living on her own in a large American city, focused on her career and friends rather than romance. While it may have started as a vehicle for its title star, it quickly became an ensemble show because of all the great characters surrounding her. There was grumpy news producer Lou Grant, whip-smart news writer Murray Slaughter, and news anchor Ted Baxter, the dumbest and most arrogant man on television. After 7 seasons, The Mary Tyler Moore Show ended in 1977. The plot? A new station manager of WJM-TV wants to boost the station's news ratings and fires pretty much everybody, except for Ted Baxter, the most incompetent employee.
It's a long way to Tipperary, to the sweetest girl I know.
The 2000s marked a turning point in television, with some programs going to dark places they'd never gone to before. From police procedurals to iconic cartoons, these episodes of beloved shows weren't afraid to cover tough topics. The American version of The Office helped popularize cringe comedy, particularly through the embarrassing antics of Dunder Mifflin Scranton branch manager Michael Scott. Seemingly unaware of the damage and chaos he leaves in his wake, Michael has nothing to offer but is so desperate to be liked that he routinely makes promises that he can't keep. In what's become the most notorious episode of The Office by far, it's revealed that he once promised college tuition to an entire class of students.
I've made some empty promises in my life, but hands down, that was the most generous.
Scott's Tots sees Michael and Aaron visit the local high school, where the senior class has been anticipating a round of scholarships courtesy of Mr. Scott. After sitting through a song and dance number honoring Michael for his generosity, he must admit to all of their faces that he never accrued the fortune that he anticipated having a decade ago. The kids are crushed, and Michael's hapless graduation gift of laptop batteries only makes it worse. Fewer television episodes are harder to sit through than Scott's Tots. Fans rewatching the series will sometimes skip the episode entirely while making their way through Season 6. The main arc of Season 3 of the scientific police procedural Bones was the tracking and capture of a charismatic, persuasive, and brutal repeat cannibal killer, initially known only as Gormagon. Over time, the team of brilliant forensic anthropologists from the Jeffersonian, led by Dr. Temperance Brennan and FBI liaison Seeley Booth, realized that Gormagon has an apprentice responsible for some of his most horrific acts. Much of the running time of the 2008 episode, The Pain in the Heart, is devoted to setting up nerdy and unlikely Dr. Hodgins as this apprentice. But it can't be that simple. The team discovers that the inside operative is the even more unlikely intern, Zach Addy, a sweet, sensitive genius who is exactly the kind of person Gormagon could manipulate. It's a particularly dark and sad episode of Bones, which is dark enough as it is, considering its propensity to depict rotting human remains. It breaks the procedural format while writing actor Eric Milligan off the show, as Zach is convicted of murder and sentenced to live out his days in a mental health facility. Patients died all the time on the medical dramedy Scrubs. That's just part of life for hospital doctors. The show deftly weaved tragedy with comedy, particularly via fantasy sequence from the mind of young resident Dr. John Dorian. The 2004 episode My Screw Up used that storytelling device to tell a devastating story of grief and give viewers a shocking twist ending. The usually unflappable physician in charge, Dr. Perry Cox, is busy planning his son's first birthday party and celebrating his brother-in-law Ben's newly cancer-free status. Before going out to run an errand, Dr. Cox tells JD to run some tests on Ben, but JD would rather tend to the elderly Mr. Taylor.
I already looked at his EKG, newbie. And trust me, he's not gonna die in the next 30 minutes. Now, go!
It seems that Dr. Cox was wrong, as he returns to find out that Mr. Taylor actually did die while he was gone. This sends him into a rage, so he blames JD, takes over his patients, and works for days straight. The episode ends with Dr. Cox and Ben having a conversation about the power of forgiveness. Dr. Cox admits he doesn't want to go to the party, because it isn't a party at all. It's Ben's funeral. Mr. Taylor hadn't been the one who died. Ben was. The typically tough and unemotional Dr. Cox crumbles, physically and emotionally. Comedians Trey Parker and Matt Stone struck Colorado mountain gold with South Park, gaining a reputation for having one of the raunchiest shows around. While elementary schooler Eric Cartman has engaged in all sorts of problematic antics, none of his exploits come close to his actions in the 2001 episode Scott Tenorman Must Die. After local 9th grader Scott Tenorman swindles Cartman out of $10, Cartman decides to take revenge. He writes Scott's favorite band, Radiohead, asking them to come to town, convincing them to make the trip by lying about Scott dying of cancer. Cartman tells his friends about the plan. He's going to train a starving pony to bite off Scott's genitals, and he'll embarrass himself by crying in front of Radiohead. The kids warn Scott, who sends his parents to deal with the pony. Cartman reveals all at the South Park Chili Con Carnival. He knew his friends would tell Scott, and that Scott would send his parents to the pony farm, where he knew Farmer Jenkins would shoot and kill the trespassers on sight. The chili that Scott's chowing down on, it's made out of his own parents, whose bodies Cartman chopped up. Scott is destroyed emotionally, with Radiohead watching as Cartman celebrates his victory.
Oh, the tears of unfathomable sadness. Yummy, yummy, you guys.
CBS enjoyed 15 years of high ratings for Criminal Minds, as millions found it satisfying to watch genius detectives and profilers stop some of the most despicable and frightening killers and kidnappers on television. The good guys usually won on Criminal Minds, but the happy ending of catching serial murdering villains couldn't overcome the horrific imagery and story conjured by the 2-part Season 4 ender in 2009, To Hell, followed by And Back. When numerous people living on the edge of society in Detroit begin to disappear, the Behavioral Analysis Unit takes the case. When they finally find their culprit, it's a sadder, more complex, and far more gruesome situation than the team could have imagined, or network TV viewers could have expected. Developmentally disabled adult Lucas Turner had paralyzed his brother Mason when he wanted to sell their family pig farm. Lucas wound up caring for his brother while also venturing out to steal medical supplies and kidnap people. The victims were used to perform deadly rudimentary stem cell removal procedures, all under Mason's orders. As for the spent bodies of the disappeared, Lucas fed those to the pigs. It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia has all the bones of a traditional sitcom, but there's nothing traditional about the gang. Dennis, Dee, Mac, Charlie, and Frank have become television legends thanks to their schemes, which usually involve deception, debasement, and even death. The 2007 episode, Mac is a Serial Killer, has all three of those things. When Mac shows up wearing the same clothes he wore the previous day with scratches on his neck, Frank thinks he might be the serial killer that's on the loose.
Oh, if I prove that he is guilty, I am gonna torture the shit out of him.
Mac is no killer, but he does have a secret. He's dating a trans woman, and he doesn't want to tell his friends yet. Dennis and Dee want to find the real killer. So to get into the proper mindset, they stalk the waitress with tools stolen from a hardware store manned by Dee's neighbor, Gary. Dennis and Dee meet back up with Frank to call Mac, luring him into Gary's apartment. When Frank threatens to kill Mac with a chainsaw, Mac finally reveals the truth. So if Mac isn't the killer, who is? That's quickly revealed when Charlie opens Gary's fridge looking for beer and finds multiple severed heads instead. Gary comes home and Frank turns on the chainsaw as the episode concludes, implying that the gang murders the murderer. Patients experiencing medical trauma frequently and heartbreakingly died on ER, with the series showing the profound impact of such experiences on medical professionals. The two-part saga from 2000, Be Still My Heart and All in the Family, are the best ER episodes ever, at least according to IMDb users. They offer some of the series' most harrowing medical drama, while also making it personal for the doctors, overwhelmingly and tragically so. It's not a lovely Valentine's Day in the ER, as multiple doctors try and fail to save the lives of a couple involved in a car accident while the victim's kids look on. Another team treats a sick dog, while the sometimes romantically entangled physicians Carter and Knight both tend to Paul, a man with serious mental health issues. Dr. Carter lashes out at Knight and storms off after a disagreement, so he's not present when Paul suffers an episode, finds a knife, and uses it to stab Dr. Knight. Carter discovers his dying colleague on the floor of the exam room after Paul stabs him too, and the pair stare at each other as they drift into unconsciousness. Despite the best efforts of the trauma response team, Dr. Knight dies from internal injuries suffered in the stabbing. Dr. Carter survives, a broken man after the death of his colleague and potential love. From episode 1, it was clear that Breaking Bad was going to be a gloomy affair. The series tracked the descent of Walter White, a scientist turned chemistry teacher who becomes a cutthroat New Mexico methamphetamine dealer in order to fund his cancer treatments and provide for his family after his death. Season 2's penultimate episode, Phoenix, represents a particularly bleak turning point in Walt's moral downfall. Walt is resentful over missing his daughter's birth because his partner Jesse was too high on heroin to handle a major meth sale. He refuses to hand over his accomplice's cut of the profits, so Jesse's girlfriend, Jane, concocts a blackmail scheme to get the money.
Do right by Jesse tonight, or I will burn you to the ground.
Walt decides to hand over the cash, but only to Jesse. When he decides to go back to Jesse's apartment later to talk to him, Walt finds him and Jane passed out from the effects of heroin. Walt tries to rouse his partner, which makes Jane shift onto her back. It's not long before she vomits and begins to choke. While Walt is more than capable of saving Jane's life, he chooses to watch her die instead. Dexter presented an audacious, gruesome, and psychologically taxing spin on the familiar TV genre of cop versus killer. Dexter Morgan, a blood splatter analyst for the Miami Police Department, harbors an insatiable urge to kill, so he rationalizes his serial murdering by only targeting bad people, like other serial killers. While Dexter was never family viewing, some fans thought that the season 4 finale, The Getaway, still went a bit too far. Dexter spends most of the season getting close to Arthur Mitchell, a church-going family man who has a double life as the Trinity Killer. Arthur figures out Dexter is also a murderer, but Dexter manages to make his move and take out his rival with a hammer. Thinking his bloodlust is permanently satiated, Dexter looks forward to a quiet, murder-free life with his family. He returns home and finds his wife, Rita, dead for hours by Arthur's hand in a bathtub full of her own blood. His young son Harrison sits traumatized on the bathroom floor, covered in his mother's blood, mirroring Dexter's earliest memory of his mother's murder. Across its original 13-season run, King of the Hill consistently told low-key, amusing, realistic stories about Texan propane salesman Hank Hill's attempts to relate to his goofy son Bobby and make sense of the rapidly changing world. Writers deviated from the form very occasionally, never more dramatically than with the surreal and macabre 2003 episode Pygmalion. Luann attends a class at the Learning Annex and meets Trip Larson, a pork processing tycoon. He offers Luann a job and instantly develops an unhealthy fixation with her. He dictates how Luann dresses and wears her hair, and moves her into his home with no warning. Peggy vocally opposes the relationship, and she receives a headless pig on her doorstep for doing so. Trip serves Luann drugged milk and dyes her hair red in an attempt to transform her into a woman from a Larson Pork Products poster that he idealized since childhood. Rejecting a marriage proposal from Trip while he's dressed in a pig costume at a Halloween party, Luann flees into a slaughterhouse and gets caught on a conveyor belt. As she's about to be turned into sausage, Trip joins her and welcomes death, only for Peggy to find them at the last minute. She saves Luann, while Trip gets impaled on a spike and killed.
And now, he's in a better place.
Honey, Trip had a mental breakdown and is now a sausage. That's not a better place.
By the end of season 5, House had settled into a formula that made it a compelling, heavily watched medical procedural drama. Each episode, a couple of patients would check into the Princeton Plainsboro Teaching Hospital with a mystery ailment, and Dr. House would crudely insult his assistant diagnosticians until they all identified and treated the disease. That all still happens in the 2009 episode Simple Explanation. As the medical team copes with a patient who recovers from a terminal illness just as his wife and caretaker seem to be at death's door, a member of the staff unexpectedly dies. Dr. Lawrence Kuttner, usually a cheery, optimistic, and kind individual, is discovered to have died by suicide. The other doctors grieve, totally unable to cope with the loss because it just doesn't make sense to them. House, deep in denial, thinks Dr. Kuttner must have been murdered, but alas, there is no simple explanation for suicide. The episode is partly so dark because it unexpectedly delves into the personal life of one of its supporting characters, and doesn't offer up any easy answers in the wake of a devastating loss.